watching the Asset Preservation Hour with Stewart Willis. I'm Joe Wilson. Stewart, we're talking about the big secret. Let's talk it. What is the big secret, Stewart?
You know, I think Social Security is the one thing people overlook in retirement. You know, they just take it as this kind of automatic, guaranteed thing,
Sure.
and they just, you know, listen to their friends at the water cooler. And I think oftentimes it's really, really important to make sure you have a plan when it comes to Social Security.
Right.
You know, all the time I'll see people come in, they'll have $1 million in their 401k and IRAs, and, you know, they're really concerned about planning that. But when we do our Social Security analysis, what we'll do is we'll find out that they'll have $1.5 million of benefit between the two of them over their lifetime,
right.
And they've never done anything.
And never planned it.
Yeah, they've never.
And they're running off of what Uncle Bob and Aunt Sue did because, you know, that's how they used to do it, but things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Social Security was, you know, never meant to be taxed. And believe it or not, it was Ronald Reagan that made it taxable for the first time in 1983. And Bill Clinton made it more taxable.
That's correct.
You know,
in the 90s.
And so oftentimes what people are thinking about is, hey, you know what? Joe at the water cooler says that I need to take my benefit right now because it's going out of business, right? Social Security is going to fail and might as well take it now. And I think what's really important is to realize that everybody's situation is different. Sometimes it makes sense to take it early. Sometimes it makes sense to delay. And I think at Asset Preservation, what we do differently is we really focus not just on, hey, what's good for the average person, but what's actually good for you. And I think you need to consider all variables when it comes time.
You know, Stewart, I've heard this before that some people have said this might be the worst time to just kind of start taking money out of your investments to help defer that down the line. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, most people realize you buy low and sell high, right? And obviously the markets are down from the peak, but are they really down from where they should be historically? I mean, just remember the last several years, you know, especially since March of 2020, a lot of this market is all fluff. We've just inserted $7 trillion of stimulus dollars.
Helicopter money from the Fed.
Right. It's a false economy. And so a lot of this fluff to rebound out of the great COVID, you know, recession here is all bogus. And so I don't know. It all depends on your personal situation. For our clients, what we've done is we've always made sure that a big portion of their assets are safe and fixed and kind of immune from that volatility. So what I would say, it's typically a mistake to sell low.
Sure.
And remember, when you need income, it's not just created. You've got to
have the money there.
Right? And so if you're ending up needing income when the market's down, and oftentimes in many portfolios, what you're doing is having to sell low out of those portfolios.
The last thing you want to do.
Yeah, and so I think it's really important to make sure you have a real plan, a real income plan, not only for the good years, but for the bad years as well.
You know, you see a lot of folks, I know as busy as you are here in the Phoenix area, and they come in with these big box firm statements, and they've got these massive numbers because they've been saving prolifically, and the market's been, as you said, up until recently. And so they've got this big amount of money, but really what we're talking about today, and especially with how it partners with Social Security, is an income report that gives them that personalized written income plan, and then our Social Security maximization analysis to how to best utilize that. Talk about that, about how you guys use those reports in your practice.
Yeah, I think it's the one thing that people are surprised about. You know, even if they didn't come in to talk about Social Security, I think it's really important to focus on it. And the reason is, like I said before, oftentimes your total Social Security benefit is oftentimes more than your total savings.
That's right.
Right? And so if you're coming in here to think about, you know, your assets, why not think about your income stream as well? And remember, in 1983, like I said, Ronald Reagan made Social Security taxable for the first time. And here's the thing, it doesn't always have to be taxable. What determines whether it's taxable or not is all of your other taxable income. So if you take, you know, Joe at the water cooler's opinion and you say, okay, well, let's take Social Security early. Let's take it at 62. Well, then what are you going to do? Defer all your IRAs until later? Well, guess what?
You have to turn that on.
It's coming one day. Someone's going to pay taxes on the IRA one day, whether it's you or whether it's your kids, someone's paying taxes. I think it just makes sense to have a real plan, to really think it through.
A comprehensive plan.
Absolutely.
That looks at not just the assets and just the income, but how, so every piece of this has to put together, because what you can't do is mess this up. And I think that's what's so important. You know, folks can go to socialsecurity.gov. Have you been on that website?
Yeah.
It's like
not very helpful.
No.
You know what? We used to do these big Social Security workshops. We'd rent out the Arizona Broadway Theater, these big facilities. We'd have 100, 150 people at our seminars, and we'd be talking about Social Security, and people were just completely lost. Well, we'd give them information about what we thought was a right way to plan. They'd go to Social Security, to the office, and they would literally get a completely different answer depending on which window they went to. And listen, God bless them, they're trying their hardest.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not trying to, push back on the guys at Social Security. They're doing their darndest. But oftentimes, remember, they're there to give you information. They're not there to help you plan. It's up to you to make those decisions. So I think it's best that you go, and when you're making these decisions for Social Security, that you're making an informed decision, that you know exactly what the result will be when you go there.
Well, you made a great point, and I think it's important to bring it back up to the audience. Not only are you looking at your income and how much you're getting off of your investments, but also how it is affecting the overall tax plan and how that affects your Social Security and when to maximize it. And that's what we're talking about here, this maximization of Social Security. It is so important that those all come together. And what a great offer you guys have for the folks here in Phoenix.
Yeah, what we're offering the audience today is the complimentary Social Security analysis and a complimentary portfolio review. But you have to take action today. If you give us a call at 833-652-7829, or you click on that QR code that's on your screen right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at, does it make sense to look at taking Social Security early, or does it make sense to delay? Everybody's situation is different. If you've built up a great retirement, you've put away a lot of money into these thrift savings plans, IRAs, 401ks, all of these tax-deferred investments, if you've done your job, you want to make sure what is the best way to diffuse that tax time bomb, and we're here to help.
Folks, this is why it's so important that you have a clear understanding of your income and where are the best places for you to get it out of your retirement plan and how Social Security can work with that. But to do that, we need you to call the team, 833-652-7829. When they answer the phone, tell them I want a Social Security maximization report, because that's going to give you a report that Stewart and his team are going to put together. It's going to show you how to maximize your benefit. Ask yourself this: what happens if you get this wrong? This is not something you want to just do on a whim and go to a website and hope you pick the right options. And that's why Stewart and his team are standing by. Stewart, I want you to close us out here.
Once again, give us a call at 833-652-7829 or click on that QR code at Asset Preservation. We'd be glad to help and give you that second opinion.
Folks, you get one shot at retirement and one shot at retirement income planning. This is the time to act. You owe it to yourself. Call that number, 833-652-7829.
Call 833-652-7829 to receive your complimentary retirement readiness review and Social Security maximization report. Get the most from your Social Security payments. Find the strategy that maximizes your Social Security benefit and preserves the assets you've saved for retirement. Social Security seems easy, right? The question is, should you take it now or later? There are numerous ways to file for Social Security. The decisions you make can also affect how much you pay in taxes. You've paid into Social Security for decades. Now, get the most out of your Social Security benefit. Call Stewart and his team, 833-652-7829, for your complimentary retirement readiness review and Social Security maximization report. Now you need to build that into a retirement income plan with all your assets. Call Stewart and his team right now at 833-652-7829 to receive your complimentary retirement readiness review and Social Security maximization report, or use the QR code on the screen to schedule your appointment today.
Phoenix, you're watching the Asset Preservation Hour with Stewart Willis. I'm Joe Wilson. Stewart, we are making history, and not exactly in the good ways. I want to run some economic global things by you, and I want to get your feedback for the viewers today. Since 1994 was the first time the Federal Reserve, the last time, they raised 75 basis points, right? And we just did that and projecting to do it again and again. Since 1994. Stuart, we haven't had a war in Europe in 75 5 years. And I know you were telling me at lunch today that you had someone that recently came in that had 25% of their retirement assets just in international funds, and they're a conservative investor. So you've got interest rates going up. You've got the Federal Reserve fighting interest rates. We have debt. 4 years ago, we were $20 trillion in debt 4 years ago. Today, we're over $30 trillion in debt. We're making history, not always in a good way. And my Lord, the volatility we're seeing in portfolios. What are the people of Phoenix to do?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people, really understand what kind of risk they're taking. And I think that that's the biggest thing that people are missing is they just don't know. Listen, everybody is bullish in a bull market.
Right.
But when it comes time to these bear markets, now that we're seeing the market down 20+%,
right.
These people that were very bold and brave during a bull market, well, you know what? Now the chickens are coming home to roost, aren't they?
Correct.
They're taking unnecessary risks that they didn't understand. Because what's happened, Joe, is that literally for the last decade, I say it over and over again, a blind chicken could have made money in that market, right? I mean,
it was pretty good time to be saving money.
And so we get a lot of these self-investors that just like to be able to use these very complex terms to be able to relate to these very complicated things, right? It makes us feel like, hey, we're in the know.
Sure.
Here's the reality. When someone comes to me and says, hey, Stewart, where's this market going? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know specifically.
Of course not.
If I knew with all certainty, I wouldn't be, hanging out with them. I'd be on my 500-foot yacht in the south of France,
Isn't that the truth?
or in the Amalfi Coast where I just got back
Take
from.
me
right?
with you. Let's go.
Right? But I don't. And here's the thing. That's the one thing we do very well at asset preservation is we diversify. We diversify that risk. But I think it's really important to understand that over the last several years, what they've done when it comes to mutual funds, 401ks, even now, the thrift savings plan is bringing on these target date funds.
Target date funds.
It's easy, right? It makes a decision easy. Oh, I'm retiring this date. Let's pick this.
Hit the easy button.
Right? Well, how much are those exposed to international positions? Right? Did it plan on the war from Ukraine? Have they adjusted those suitable positions because of this war?
Correct.
Or are they maintaining those same numbers?
Correct.
That's why it's not asset allocation isn't everything. You also need to have a tactical and strategic approach. It needs to be able to change with the times. We're not in the same world today that we were 2 years ago. We just left the best economy the world's ever seen. And overnight, we're in this terrible position. The one good thing about, I try to be an optimist. The one good thing about all these crazy interest rate hikes, it has strengthened the dollar.
Correct.
And so, I was just in Italy, spent some time in Italy over the summer.
Coin
here.
goes a little further.
We could buy a lot more, but remember what Donald Trump said. And listen, I don't care if you love Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump. Doesn't matter to me. But the one thing he always tried to do is keep a weak dollar. Why? Yeah. Because he wanted to make exports. He wanted people to export the American goods to a foreign economy. And, my son used to be in motorsports, and his teammates, their parents from the UK would always call me and say, oh, the dollar, it's weak, so we're going to go buy. They used to come to the auto auction here every year, the Jackson Barrett. Well, guess what? They're not coming anymore because the dollar's so strong.
They can't afford to come over here.
Right?
That's exactly right.
They can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. So it's really going to hurt us in more than one way.
So we're seeing volatility on the dollar. We're seeing volatility in the markets. You brought something up, and I want to bring it up, and I want you to dive into it for the viewers.
Yeah.
The average target date fund, if you will, someone that's retiring 2025, it's designed to be more conservative as you get closer to retirement. That's only a few years away.
Right.
It's down over 14% year to date. The average 2030, that's only 6 years, 7, 8 years away, depending on when your bucket's going to be hitting. You're looking at down over 15% year to date. What if the Federal Reserve continues to just, as they've said, we're going to raise rates to beat inflation? What is the modern retiree to do right now with these target date funds and all their funds in their 401ks and IRAs?
Well, here's the thing, is that for 35 years, interest rates have dropped. Right? Over the last year and a half, we started to see this spike in interest rates.
That's correct.
And literally over the last year, we've seen this tremendous doubling of interest rates. And so what that's doing, it's destabilizing bonds. So for 35 years, as interest rates fall, bonds have gone up in value. It's been really good for bondholders. Well, now the opposite is true. And so does it make sense for a 3 or 4% yield to risk 10, 15%?
Right. And people, I don't think, understand how much risk is sitting inside these portfolios. And I know that's something you and your team specializes really when you're doing this retirement-ready review and we're looking at these volatile times. I think it's imperative for folks to understand this is the risk that you could be exposing yourself to being invested the way you are. And in many times, it's them hitting that easy button and set it and forget it. And it's time to shift some sails.
Listen, I think you're right on, Joey. I think people just want it to be easy, right? Like people say, oh, well,
sure
2020, 2040, they want to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
It's the keep it simple, stupid mentality,
Correct.
right? I get it, and normally that makes sense. What's happened, though, with these target date funds is they've oversimplified it, right? And what we're starting to see now is that these target date funds are becoming very profitable for these mutual fund companies, too. And so now what we're seeing is people are now looking at them as commodities. So they're looking at, for example, the 2025 fund, and they're comparing one company to company B.
Right.
And if this one made 7% last year and this one made 8%, we're going to pick the one with 8%.
Right.
So what's happening? How does this one, if it has the same allocations, do better than the other one? You know why? It's because it's taking more risk.
Correct.
And so what's happening is after these target date funds are being commoditized and people are now just comparing rates of return, what we're seeing now is an increasing amount of risk being layered into these target date funds. And I just say this to the audience today, if you have target date funds in your 401k and you're over 59 and a half, you actually have some options that a lot of people don't realize.
That's right.
What we're offering the audience today is a complimentary portfolio review where we will take a look at what kind of risks are you taking inside your portfolio, what kind of fees are you paying, and are the target date funds you're in right for you? You just need to make sure that you understand what those risks are, but you have to take action today. Give us a call at 833-652-7829, or even easier, pick up your cell phone, click on that QR code that's on your screen right now. That'll take you to apsitaxes.com, our website, where you can sign up for a complimentary portfolio review. But you have to get off that couch right now, take action, give us a call.
Folks, you get one shot at retirement, and this is not the time to be cavalierish about your retirement and your life hard savings. You owe it to yourself more than doing retirement planning off of a statement from a big box firm. You need to have a written income plan and know exactly the risk you have. So dial that number, 833-652-7829. Do it today.
Call 833-652-7829 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report. Why take unnecessary risk when you don't have to? At 65 years old, would you drive to the grocery store at 100 miles per hour if 40 miles per hour would get you there safely? When nearing retirement, are you still driving your investment accounts like you're in your 30s or 40s? Have you changed your investment election since you first chose them in your retirement accounts at work? Call Stewart and his team at 833-652-7829 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report. Do you know exactly how much risk you are taking in your investment accounts? Now that you've accumulated a nest egg for retirement, you want to be certain the risk you're taking in those investments matches your goals and objectives. Call Stewart and his team, 833-652-7829 for your own complimentary retirement readiness review and risk report, or use the QR code below to begin scheduling your appointment. You may not have time to recover from taking too much risk.
Phoenix, you're watching the Asset Preservation Hour with Stewart Willis. I'm Joe Wilson. Stewart, I think it's important in these markets and times. We all want to talk about the stock market up, the stock market down, and all that fun stuff, but so many folks, you were telling me, part of your all's positioning there at the firm is the amount of tax work you do. And I think it's so important for people to understand the legacy planning and the window that is available right now to so many of the modern retirees with things that you and your firm help people that have amassed some money to help pass that on to the next generations.
Yeah, and first of all, I mean, the first question is, do you want to pass money to the next generation, right? I mean, because oftentimes, listen, it's not for me to state our clients' goals. It's for me to achieve them.
That's right.
Right? And so if you want to die and bounce the check, your last check out to the undertaker, then I'll help you get there.
Absolutely.
But if you have a goal to make sure that you're passing on to the next generation, I think it's really important that you have a plan. And I think, obviously, the fundamental base of that is to have some estate planning done. You need to make sure you have a living trust. If you own a home, if you have some assets, you need to make sure you have a living trust. I think that's number one. And with the living trust, oftentimes what comes with it, almost every time, you want to make sure that you have a general durable power of attorney. You want to make sure you have a healthcare power of attorney, your living will, your end-of-life decisions. Do you want to be kept alive on life support?
Right.
You know, I had a client once that told me, you know, when we were doing the end-of-life questioning, I said, hey, do you want to be maintained on life support if you're in a persistent vegetative state or irreversible coma? And most people say, no, I don't want to live like a vegetable.
Right.
Well, this client said, well, you know what? I've worked for this damn money. You know, keep me alive, freeze, cut out, you know, cut off my head, freeze it, whatever you got to do, save me, launch me to Mars. I don't care. I earned this money. I don't care about the kids. It's a difference. Everybody has different wishes.
It is a personal story.
It's totally personal. And so I'm not here to judge it. I'm just here to accomplish it. And so it's important to have all of those documents in place, you know, and I tell people all the time, listen, you know, do as I say, not as I do. And why I say that is, oftentimes I feel like a hypocrite because I've been preaching getting living trust done forever. I just got mine done last year after 20 years of preaching it. Why? Because I'm busy. I'm running a company. I'm raising a family. You're thinking about other things.
But it is so important.
It's huge.
And it's so important to have it reviewed. And folks, maybe you're watching this and you have a living trust. Maybe you haven't looked at it in a while. Well, this is for you. You need to have this reviewed because things can change and laws change and numbers change.
It absolutely. I mean, look, if you look back at your documents and if you're giving your 42-year-old children to the next door neighbors that died 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, maybe it's time to review your documents.
But how many times do we see that?
I mean, literally all the time, and people just don't make changes. Look, it's like when clients of ours or prospects of ours come in and they know that they're in a bad relationship with a financial advisor, or they know they need to make changes to their trust. They just don't do it. People don't make change. That's why, you know, I feel blessed about the Asset Preservation Hour. We've been able to have this outreach to people to really get them, to motivate them to make some change in their life.
Well, you've got a great team, and I was in your Tempe office not too long ago, and I got to bring this up because this was fascinating to me. One of your advisors in the Tempe office was sitting down with me and was giving me an example. You had someone that came in. I'm gonna highlight some points here. He had $1 million in his IRA, 65 years old, $1 million. Very common number you see here in Phoenix with the clients that you help. They were running me through the tax analysis report, and that's what we're going to be talking about here for folks that they're going to have their opportunity to get a version of this. But out of that $1 million IRA, if they were to take those RMDs at 72, because if they don't, they get taxed at 50%, and just reinvest those back, and then when they pass, that goes on to their heirs under this scenario. It was a $916,000 federal tax bill on $1 million.
It's crazy, isn't it?
But there's things you can do right now, and I know you guys preach this about the Roth conversion challenge. There are numerous options that folks can do right now with these qualified money that's sitting in 401ks and IRAs, but they have to act now. Talk about that.
Yeah, the reason I have such urgency in my voice when I talk about Roth conversion is because we are in the most efficient tax window in history right now. At the end of 2025, if Congress doesn't act...
And they're brilliant at not acting.
Well, exactly, right? And remember, when Donald Trump cut the tax rates, you know, during the Trump tax cuts, he did it during the greatest economy in history. Now we're in a horrible economy, right? And so it's a much more difficult feat to lower taxes when we're in such a difficult position. But if Congress doesn't act, we're going to revert back to the Obama-era tax rates, which are dramatically higher.
Significantly
You know,
higher.
the 22% bracket used to be 25 to 28%.
Wow.
The 24 was 28 to 33%.
Wow.
It's just way higher. So I think it's really important to take advantage of where we are now. And look, taxes are a pain in the butt. We run a tax office. Most people know that for our financial clients, we have a full-service tax preparation office. But the purpose of our tax office, Joe, isn't just tax preparation; it's tax planning.
Yes,
right.
It's so important.
We're going to do about 1,000 tax returns this year, and it is a complete nightmare of work. So. You know, I always say that I'm a man of leisure, but, you know, jokingly, because during tax season, I'm working 7 days a week, 12-hour days.
Sure.
The whole purpose is to be able to look at all the data and take a look. What if we do a Roth conversion? Because people all the time say, well, I don't know if a Roth is for me. My advisor says it doesn't make sense. And sometimes I see these advisors that work at big box firms, they're just not allowed to give tax advice.
Right.
If you take a look at the bottom of your statement, it says, do not construe any of this as tax advice.
Correct.
Talk to your tax professional.
And that's what makes you guys different.
Our firm is tax professionals.
Correct.
Right? It's the whole point. Everyone knows when it comes time to tax planning that Roth is better. right? I mean, not many people argue that.
Sure.
But the question is, how much should you do and how fast should you do it? And the reality is that most advisors have an internal pressure. Like, the stock market's down 20-some%. So let's pretend they were managing $100 million. Now the market's down 24%. So if they were managing $100 million, they'd be down to $76 million.
Correct.
So they're making less money off of the people's money they're managing. Now they're going to tell you to convert your Roth at 24%.
That's another hit.
Now they're down again.
Yeah.
So these advisors are under a lot of pressure to perform, to grow their assets under management. Oftentimes they're under way too much pressure to have you convert. Because guess what? The other thing with the Roth, not only is it tax efficient, it's also one of those things that it doesn't affect your Social Security. It basically is invisible to Social Security taxation. It's a huge deal.
Folks, Stewart said it. The window for you to do this tax planning is shortening, and this is the time to act. There are things you can do right now to ensure your legacy, your wishes, the most tax-efficient way. But to do that, you have to dial 833-652-7829. Stewart's team is standing by to help you be and stay retirement ready, but you need to act. And when you call, say, I want a tax analysis. Let Stewart and his team run a report. How much money do you have and do you owe to the IRS sitting inside of your 401ks, your old IRAs that have been laying around that you have not looked at? This is the time to get comprehensive wealth planning advice, and to do that, dial 833-652-7829. You're watching Asset Preservation Hour with Stewart Willis.
Call 833-652-7829 right now for your retirement readiness review. Having a clear path to retirement is more than just your savings. This review will include a complete risk analysis on your portfolio, an in-depth fee analysis to determine how much you are and could be paying on those investments, a tax reduction report, and lastly, we'll look at health care and legacy planning for you and your estate. To begin your retirement readiness review, call Stewart and his team at 833-652-7829 or use the QR code to schedule your appointment today. Whether your retirement is coming soon or you want to be certain you can stay retired, the Retirement Readiness Review will help guide you through your financial planning needs. Call Stewart and his team at 833-652-7829 or use the QR code to schedule your meeting today.